Alice stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window of the college's patent review room, staring out the window at the slowly rotating Star Alliance flagship in orbit. The holographic image of the reviewer came with a ruthless announcement that her energy stealth coding patent was suspended due to lack of actual combat data. She dug her fingers into the edge of the table, feeling strong dissatisfaction with the conservative rules. After Alice left the review room, she walked along the college corridor. At the end, she saw Mia waiting quietly holding a data board. Mia's eyes gleamed with anxiety, but she hesitated to speak immediately. Alice sensed the silent concern and continued walking towards her. The two returned to the underground hangar together. Alice took off her coat, rolled up her sleeves, and began to mix the silver-gray invisible coating with her own hands. She used a spray gun to evenly apply the liquid on the joints and shell of the shadow mecha, and every part seemed to be painted with dignity. Mia was nervously loading a homemade energy magazine beside her, her fingers trembling slightly, but she accurately calibrated the resonant frequency. Alice concentrated on the painting work. Although there was no conversation, the two gradually formed a tacit understanding, and she felt that she could not fight alone this time. While the coating was drying, Alice looked down at the mecha and decided to go into battle in person to collect perfect combat data this time. Mia silently recorded her heart rate data and uploaded the latest performance algorithm, her eyes full of worry and support. The entrance to the trial level opened like a huge black pupil. Alice sat in the cockpit of the shadow mecha, and the system made a low hum after the nerve connection. She took a deep breath and pushed the joystick to let the mecha enter the battlefield steadily. The shadow mecha entered the first level of the simulated battlefield, and 3 guardian mechas appeared in front. Alice immediately activated the invisible coating, and the light on the surface of the machine was distorted like an underwater shadow. She slid sideways to distance herself. When the guardian shoulder cannon turned the wrong way, Alice pulled the trigger. The resonance pulse hits the enemy's core like a silent ripple, bursting out with blue-white sparks. Her heartbeat gradually stabilized, which was the result of repeated tactics. The second level turns to a fragmented meteorite belt, and the enemy aircraft has thermal sensor tracking. Alice let the mecha move slowly close to the giant meteorite, using the coating to suppress the heat signal while receiving real-time guidance from the background. Alice followed the instructions and suddenly raised the mecha, continuously firing low-power pulses to force the enemy aircraft to change its trajectory. She completed fine-tuning at high speed, switching the magazine to interference mode, causing snowflakes to appear on the opponent's aiming system. Reynolds' mecha appears at the entrance to the third level. He is wearing the jury's test paint and has an academy emblem on his shoulder armor. Alice frowned, cut off the communication, and focused all her attention on the body's balance system. 2 mechas chase each other in a zero-gravity abandoned space station. Renault's skills are sophisticated, but Alice uses the invisible coating to suddenly disappear and reappear, constantly consuming the opponent's energy shield. Alice completed the sliding step from behind and accurately hit the tail flame of the Renault mecha's thruster with a resonance bomb, forcing him to make an emergency landing. She also noticed that the other party's communication light was flashing abnormally, as if a suspicious message was being transmitted. In the rest cabin, Mia threw the emergency report on the table, informing her that the coding formula had been leaked by the Renault mecha scan. Alice's fingers froze in the air, feeling lonely again, but she immediately stood up and walked towards the mecha. Alice decided to forcibly modify the coding formula and inject all the final catalyst into the core, even though this would lead to energy overload and shorten core life. With a determined look in her eyes, Mia finally chose to silently upload the new acting algorithm. When the gates open at the final level, the simulation suddenly switches to a real intrusion alarm. The outer perimeter of the academy was breached, and a large number of heavy-duty Predator mechas advanced towards the energy tower. The review officer urgently requested her technical assistance. Renault mecha appeared next to him. This time he sincerely expressed that he was being used and was willing to assist. He uses himself as a moving barrier to buy Alice time to rewrite the coding. She gritted her teeth and pushed the mecha to its ultimate speed and rushed into the battlefield. Energy beams intertwined into a network on the battlefield, and Alice's mecha shuttled around the edge of overload to avoid concentrated fire. She adjusted the frequency by receiving the real-time data from Mia, and found that there was a slight difference between the enemy's main ship's shield and her own magazine. Alice makes the craziest decision to actively overload the core and pump all its energy into a single resonant pulse. Sparks began to erupt from the mecha's joints, and the sound of metal twisting sounded in the cabin. She closed her eyes and pushed the joystick all the way. The resonance wave swept across the entire battlefield like an invisible giant wave, and enemy shields vibrated violently at the same frequency and collapsed one after another. One after another, the Marauder mechas lost power and floated in space like kites with broken strings. After the battle, Shadow was almost reduced to a skeleton. Alice was rescued from the badly damaged cockpit, her legs so weak that she could barely stand. The reviewer came in person, bowed his head and admitted his mistake and announced that the patent was approved immediately. 3 months later, in the newly established Resonance Workshop, Alice, Mia and Reno stood next to the new mecha. The isolation in the past turned into leadership. They divided labor and cooperated, and patented resources to enable the development of next-generation systems. At night, Alice walked to the window alone and looked at the lights of the Star Alliance. She understands that true power comes from a team, not alone. When Mia brought hot drinks and talked with Renault, she smiled lightly with relief.